Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 24th of March. So coming to the first article, a first step. Now the context here is with regards to the National Health Protection Scheme. Now this is a scheme, as you all know, this is a scheme under the Ayushman Bharat program which was introduced in this year's budget itself. Some background about the scheme is that it is going to provide a secondary as well as a tertiary health cover of rupees 5 lakh per year approximately to 10 crore families, which is going to be equivalent to 50 crore people. So that is something that you need to know in the background aspect. Now, previously also we have discussed several issues, several articles on the NHPS. So this is something that is not very new, but yes, this is a collective article. All the challenges that the scheme faces are something that are collectively given here. So that is going to be the relevance. Now, the first issue is with regards to the challenge of implementation. Now, first and foremost in this regard, you should know that this scheme in itself is the largest in the world. And this number, that is 50 crore people, is something that is a huge number. So, just by scale, this is a very difficult scheme to implement. So, that is one challenge. Another challenging aspect is that health as such is a state subject. So if health is a state subject, then the role of states is something that is going to become very important, and a cooperation between center and states is going to be vital for its implementation. So that is one more challenge that the NHPS is facing. Another challenge is that of a legal basis. Now the NHPS is simply a scheme which has been announced in the budget and it has no legal basis. For example, the RTI has a legal base, or for that matter, the right to food is a legal right in the country. And at present, the right to health is something that is not a right. So what this editorial is discussing is that to give more teeth to the scheme, to make it more powerful, a legal backing is something that should be given, and the right to health should be made a right as a legal right of the citizen. So that is one suggestion that we can say, which we can also replicate in our papers. Another thing is with regards to the regulatory control. Now, time and again, we have discussed in the past also that how much is the need of a regulatory control for the private hospitals. We all know that if the private hospitals escalate their costs of treatment, then the benefit of the NHPS is something that is going to be defeated. So what is required is some regulation of the private health sector, that first and foremost the costs are something that are minimized. Also the treatment procedures are something that are minimized. What often happens is that unnecessary treatments are something that are recommended by the private healthcare sector just to get the insurance claims. So in that context, what is important is a regulatory control. Another thing is with regards to a universal health coverage. Now, the NHPS is a step towards universal health coverage, but it is not universal health coverage because only 10 crore families are what are covered and 50 crore people will be benefiting. Now, what has been analyzed here is that those who are not being covered under the NHPS, amongst those sections, at least the vulnerable, for example, the women in those sections are vulnerable, children are vulnerable, and for that matter, the elderly are vulnerable. So these are some sections which at least this much the government should have done is that it should have focused on the vulnerable of all the sections, and universal health coverage to the vulnerable is something that should have been provided. So a case is what is being made that for those who are outside the ambit of this 10 crore families, amongst them the vulnerable section should be included. So that is something that the NHPS should focus upon. Another thing which is very important, and this is going to be the most important point of this particular editorial, is about the other social determinants of health. Now, health is something that is not only something that is related to hospital and hospital treatment. Some other factors also determine health. For example, an affordable housing, a planned urban development. We are seeing that in cities like Delhi, there is a rise of diseases like dengue. Now, this is primarily because of poor urban development in these areas. So, if there is a proper planned urban development, then these kind of diseases can be reduced. Another thing which is mentioned as a social determinant is pollution. If pollution is something that is curbed, then a large number of burden of diseases is something that can be reduced. Also, road safety is one amongst the social determinants. So if these determinants are something that the government also focuses upon, then health burden is something that can be reduced. So that is something that is important. This is an important analysis. Another thing is with regards to Niti Aayog recommendations. Now, the Niti Aayog had given its recommendations on the idea of a universal health coverage. And in that case, the Niti Aayog had said that the universal health coverage program should be a state-specific one rather than a grand national health system. But this is something that has not happened in the NHPS. This is a top-down model in this one scheme is what has been decided by the center, and this is now going to be implemented in all the states. So what becomes important in this case is that cooperative federalism is something that is followed, so that both the states as well as the center cooperate to achieve this target of universal health coverage. Another thing which is important here is the flexibility that this particular scheme is going to provide. If a person has availed a particular, if a person is a candidate for NHPS, then in that case the person can get his claim even in another state. So this flexibility of movement which this particular scheme is going to provide is something that is a huge benefit under the NHPS. But what is important again is that the states should cooperate with each other also, first with the center and then with each other also. So that is one model which needs to be followed for the success of NHPS, and this is something that this editorial has highlighted. I have mentioned in the past also that health is the most important topic for 2018, and wherever you are discussing health issues, you shall be expected to dedicate some part of your answer on suggestions. So these can be the suggestions which you can directly replicate in your answer. So that is going to be the relevance. Now coming to the next article, Tibet is not a card. Now the context here is with regards to the 60th anniversary of Dalai Lama's 1959 flight to India. Now what has happened here is that Indian officials, there's a memo which has been leaked which advises Indian officials by the government to not to attend Thank You India programs by the Tibetan community. This is primarily in the backdrop of spiraling down of India-China relation. So to improve the India-China relation, the officials are advised to maintain some distance from such programs. So that is the context here. Now coming to the issues, the first issue is with regards to Tibet's role in India-China relation. Now you need to understand that Tibet has been historically a major irritant between India and China. It is often also said that India's asylum to the Tibetan leader Dalai Lama led to the 1962 war also. So this is one issue that has been continuing in the past. But what is being analyzed in this editorial is that in the present times, Tibet hardly has any role to play as an irritant in the India-China relation, and there are other pertinent irritants which have emerged. For example, the recent Doklam standoff, India's US tilt and the Quad, also the Belt and Road Initiative, the NSG issue, also China's denial to designate Masood Azhar as an international terrorist. So all of these irritants are what are more important rather than Tibet. So that is the first analysis here. Another thing which is important is with regards to the current status of Tibet. Now, you all know that at present, this Tibet autonomous region is under Chinese control. But what is being analyzed here is that Tibet today is not the same Tibet that it was in the year 1959. Today, this area has been completely transformed. It has changed infrastructure. Intense infrastructure development is what has happened in this region. Also, the demographics of this particular region is something that has changed, primarily because Chinese have now been establishing their demographies in this particular region. So that is one analysis which has been given, that today Tibet is far away from what it used to be in the past. Also, what is important is that the outflow of refugees from Tibet into India and also trade between India and Tibet is something that is at a minimal today. This is something that has been replaced with China. Even the soft power aspect is something that is important, that in the past the Bollywood movies were very much famous in Tibet. This is again something that has now been curbed, and it is the Chinese cinema which is more popular in Tibet. So that is one current scenario. This is some ground reality of Tibet which has been analyzed in the editorial. Another thing is with regards to the new generation of Tibetans. Now this new generation of Tibetans are the Tibetans who are born in India. So they are very much cut off from their culture. And another thing is that the aspirations for getting back Tibet are something that are weakening in the newer generation. So one issue that is emerging here is the issue of citizenship, which the Tibetans are now demanding in India. There is a demand that India should modify its citizenship rules and it should give citizenship to approximately 1 lakh Tibetan refugees. So that is something that is an important issue vis-a-vis Tibet. Another issue is with regards to a future leader. Now what has been analyzed here is that the political successor for Dalai Lama is not yet announced. So there is a leadership vacuum which is there in Tibet, and this can impact the struggle for a free Tibet in future. So that is one important analysis. Another issue which has been highlighted is with regards to the Rangtsen groups. These Rangtsen groups, Rangtsen in Tibet means freedom. So these are the freedom groups which are there in Tibet, which are fighting for Tibet's freedom, and they are active in India. So it is these groups which are causing a major irritant with China, and these groups are somehow active in India, and as a result of which a violent aspect is something that can be expected in the movement. So that is one analysis which has been given. Another thing is with regards to the talks between Dalai Lama and China's government. Now, what has been analyzed here is that officially there are no talks, but it is being hinted that secret level talks are something that have been going on. Channels of communication are something that are open between Tibet and China. So that is one analysis which needs to be explored here. So this is the entire issue with regards to Tibet. Whenever you are discussing India-China relation, now common aspects will be the current irritants which we have discussed here. What will be different is that if we bring about the Tibet issue, but the gist of this editorial is that Tibet is no more a card between India and China relationship, and so India should rather focus upon accommodating the Tibetan refugee population within India and developing a policy in this regard rather than using the Tibet card with China. So that is the entire analysis here. Now coming to the next article. Donald Trump and the art of breaking a deal. The context here is with regards to the Iran nuclear deal. You all know that this Iran nuclear deal was something that was signed under Obama administration in the year 2015. The participants of this deal were Iran first and foremost, and this deal was signed with the P5 countries, also with Germany, also with European Union. So these are the participants of this particular deal. Now, the issues that are important in this regard are first and foremost the UN report. Now, time and again, the United Nations has been highlighting that Iran is compliant to this particular deal. So, if Iran is compliant to the nuclear deal and the UN is also certifying that, then what is the reason for America to back out from this deal? That is one issue that is emerging. Another thing is the anti-Iran rhetoric. Now, this is primarily the cause of the withdrawal of US. What has happened is that President Trump from his election campaign itself had called this deal anti-US. He had called this deal as an evil deal, and as a result of which it is the rhetoric and the political compulsions because of which President Trump is keen on withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal despite the fact that this is a successful deal. So that is one important analysis here. Another thing is the nuclear arms race. Now what might happen is that if this deal is something that fails, then Iran might resume its nuclear program, and this can again lead to a nuclear arms race. Now, nuclear weapons in the West Asia, which is already a very unstable region, in that scenario, this is going to be much more destabilizing for West Asia. So that is one important analysis. Another analysis is with regards to North Korea. You should know that US, South Korea and North Korea are trying to broker a deal. This is also in the aftermath of the nuclear program of North Korea. Now, if the Iran nuclear deal fails, then the confidence of North Korea in that particular deal is something that is also going to get shaken. And this might again give a stimulus to North Korea to continue with its nuclear program. And this could lead to a global nuclear arms race. So that is one important analysis. Another thing is with regards to Iran's role in West Asia. Now here you need to understand that Iran is a major country in West Asia. It is much stronger than countries like Libya and Iraq, where US has interfered in the past. So US cannot interfere in Iran as it has done in other West Asian countries. Also, Iran has a major role to play in stabilization of Afghanistan, Iraq, and for that matter, Syria as well. Iran is the champion of the Shia Muslims. So from that context, Iran is a very important country in West Asia, and this is something that the US should acknowledge. So that is one important analysis. Another thing with regards to President Trump is the anti-Obama policy which is being followed. It is being seen that President Trump is withdrawing from all the Obama era programs. For example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, the climate deal. Even in the case of Cuba, we are seeing that President Obama had brokered some peace with Cuba, but sanctions are something that are reimposed under President Trump. Also in the case of Iran, President Obama had called it as one of his biggest achievements, the Iran nuclear deal. So all of this is something that is showing an anti-Obama sentiment. That is something that is important. Another thing is the ally-centric versus political realism approach. Now, when this Iran nuclear deal was something that was signed, then the US allies were angered with the US. This included Saudi Arabia, and this also included Israel. So at present, the policy that President Trump is following is that he is focusing on allies rather than the political realities. This was something that President Obama did not do. He focused on the political realities. He understood that Iran's stability is something that is key for West Asian stability, and in that context he had brokered this particular deal. So that is something that is important. Another thing which is very important is with regards to Iran's politics. Now you should know that in the year 2013, President Hassan Rouhani in Iran had come to power, and he had decided that he is going to do away with the sanctions that Iran is facing, and he is going to revamp the economy in Iran. Now, with the deal not being a successful one, this economic revival of Iran is something that is not happening, and as a result of which, hardliners in Iran are gaining ground, and in the coming elections, it is being feared that the hardliners might come to power, which will further make peace with Iran much more difficult for US, and as a result of which it could further destabilize West Asia. So that is something that is important with regards to Iran's politics. Another thing which is very important is the diplomatic isolation. Now this is the term which is being used for USA. It is being feared that US will now face a diplomatic isolation, because in this entire group, it is only US which is unwilling to continue with the Iran deal. Iran is willing to continue with the deal. The P4 are willing to continue. Germany is willing to continue, and so is the European Union. So indeed, this will result in a diplomatic isolation. Another thing is that this move by US is going to threaten USA's image as a deal maker, and rather it will get the image of a deal breaker, and it will prevent USA's potential to further sign such kind of deals. As I have mentioned, with North Korea, there's a fear that the deal will not be brokered. So that is the analysis here. The Iran nuclear deal is something that is important for India also, because this directly impacts West Asia. So from that context, this issue is going to be important. Now, based on today's discussion, please try and attempt these questions within a word limit of 150 words. And with this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow.